Hello guys, and welcome back to another class of our course about the complete introduction to programming with JavaScript. So in the past class we have wrote our first lines of code, and before going a little bit further in this course, I want to clarify some things with you guys that we're going to practice a little bit later. So since in our next class we are going to talk about ways to store your data, it's pretty important for you guys to know what are the different data types that exist. So not only in JavaScript, but in most programming languages, you will have pretty much the same data types. In other words, you will have pretty much the same ways to actually write down your data. So what exactly is a data type? So for those of you who have never programmed and don't have any idea of what exactly is a data type, so it's simply a specification of the kind of data that will be used inside of a certain program. In other words, for example, let's say in a program we are writing down a line of code that asks the program to print something. So for example, we want our program to print something really simple, like for example, hello, my name is Jimmy. So we are asking our program to print a certain data type. So in this case, the data type that will be printed will be a string, or in other words, a plain text. So this could be an example of data types. So of course, right now it's way more simpler to just write it down, but we're going to practice it in our next classes. So there are three common data types that exist. So what exactly are those three data types? So the first data type that we have will be the string. So a string is simply, well, it's just a simple text. In other words, when you write down a text, it's going to be, well, a string data type. You can also have numbers that can be strings. In other words, let's say, for example, you want to print something. In this case, you want to print, I don't know, you want to print 2 apples, and you want to print 2 as a number. So in this case, the number 2 will actually be considered as a string. If you also write down true inside of your brackets, it's going to be considered as a string as well. But a number is a separate data type. Another thing that you can't necessarily do is combining data types together. In other words, you can't, for example, make an addition of 1 apple plus 1 apple. So if you write down 2 strings, you can't make an addition of those 2 strings and have 2 apples as an answer. So it doesn't work. So as I said, first data type that we have will be the string. Now, the second data type that we have will be the numbers. So in this case, numbers can be any numbers that you guys want. So numbers inside of JavaScript can be used for mathematical purposes. So for example, you want to perform additions, you want to perform subtractions, multiplications, divisions, or whatever. You can use numbers. So once again, your numbers will be stored inside of inside of various places that we're going to talk about it in our next classes, where we're going to store not only numbers but all kinds of data types, and you will be able to perform various operations in the case that you guys want to make some calculations. And after that, in more advanced courses, you will, for example, communicate with the user that will communicate with your application. So in other words, you will be the programmer, and your goal here will be to communicate with a user. So ask him various questions, and depending of the answer that the user gives you, you will simply write, you will simply give him different answers. So we will talk about it a little bit later. Now the last data type that we have is the Boolean data type. So in this case, this data type is a true or false data type. It's usually used for loops. So for example, for loops and other things. It can also be used in if statements. So those data types are a bit less used, so since they are Boolean, the most common that are used are strings and numbers. But the moment that you start working with for loops, with if statement, with while loops and other things, you will use a little bit more of Boolean. It's used mostly when you guys want to have a condition. So for example, if a certain condition is true, you want to perform something. If a certain condition is false, you want to perform something else. So this is where the Boolean data type is pretty important. But to start, we're simply going to talk, well, we're going to mostly talk about the string and numbers to start. But in the next, well, when we're gonna get more advanced and we're gonna talk about various loops and other things, we're gonna talk a little bit more about Booleans. So right now you guys should know that there are three main data types, so string, numbers, and Booleans. In other programming languages, you will have a little bit more of data types. So for example, a string can be a char, can be, well, it can be, you can have more well, it can't necessarily be a char, sorry. It's more, for example, to write down a text, you have some different data types that you can use, for example, char or string. To write down numbers, you have a lot of different data types that you can use as well. But once again, it's not in JavaScript, it's in other programming languages. So for now, just stay focused on three data types, so string, numbers, as well as Booleans, and those will be the data types that we are going to mostly talk about in this course. So that's it for us, guys, and see you all in our next class.